Hey guys! Settle here. Tonight we began how Leonardo tried to build a machine gun in the 15th century, 33-barrel organ and its flaws. But before we get started, make sure that you subscribed and comment me where are you watching from. Leonardo da Vinci was not a man of his time, he was a man who existed ahead of all time. Born in 1452 in Vinci, Italy, he arrived in a world that was unaware it would eventually be catalogued, measured, and invented upon by him. From his earliest years, he displayed a restless curiosity that transcended any discipline. Nature, mechanics, anatomy, and art were not separate fields, they were facets of the same divine puzzle, and Leonardo was determined to know all of them. By the age of 10, he dissected birds, studied their wing structures, and wondered why humans could not similarly take to the skies. By 15, he had already begun sketching rudimentary machines, demonstrating a comprehension of leverage, tension, and force that would baffle engineers centuries later. He moved through life collecting observations as though he were assembling a map of the universe, cataloging the interplay of water, air, stone, and muscle with the meticulous patience of a natural philosopher and the manic energy of a visionary. Leonardo's notebooks became his universe. Page after page of intricately detailed sketches, anatomical dissections, hydrodynamic studies, and mechanical inventions formed a compendium that no one could fully comprehend in his lifetime. Some pages contained sketches of humans in motion, muscles and tendons revealed as if by X-ray, each tendon and bone considered for its functional purpose, and yet interspersed with flying machines, bizarre war devices, and aesthetic designs whose practicality often defied logic. Leonardo's mind did not distinguish between artistic beauty and scientific utility, everything was interconnected. To him, understanding the human body was inseparable from understanding the world, from observing a river's eddies to mapping the flow of air over a wing. In his laboratory, the principles of engineering, the discipline of anatomy, and the aesthetics of composition existed simultaneously, forming a continuous study of how the universe worked. One of his most enduring obsessions was flight. Leonardo observed birds with painstaking precision, recording the angles of their wings, the arcs of their flight, and the aerodynamics of gliding. He translated these observations into machines, ornithopters with enormous wings designed to be powered by human muscle, aerial screws intended to rise vertically, gliders inspired by the shape of bat wings. Each device represented a dialogue between human ambition and the limits of contemporary materials. Linen, wood, rope, and metal were the raw elements he had at his disposal, yet he imagined mechanisms that would require strength, coordination, and aerodynamics far beyond the capabilities of his contemporaries. Despite the impossibility of practical flight in his era, Leonardo's sketches captured the essential principles of lift, drag, and air resistance with remarkable clarity. These were not mere fantasies, they were conceptual blueprints of applied physics centuries before the discipline existed formally. Water fascinated him equally. Leonardo designed sophisticated canals, water-lifting devices, diving suits, and submersible vessels. He observed fluid dynamics with meticulous care, noting turbulence, vortices, and eddies in rivers and fountains. His sketches illustrated water flowing around obstacles, over blades, and into hydraulic systems, anticipating principles of hydrodynamics and mechanical engineering that would not be rediscovered for generations. Leonardo's dive suits, designed from leather with glass viewing ports and air tubes, envisioned humans moving beneath the surface for purposes of military strategy, exploration, and engineering inspection. His understanding of buoyancy, air supply, and mobility underwater exceeded the technological means of his time, yet the designs revealed a mind striving to extend human capacity into realms previously considered inaccessible. Leonardo's interest in war and defense produced a series of conceptual innovations equally remarkable for their ambition and impracticality. Armored vehicles, multi-barreled guns, rotating cannon platforms, and giant crossbows appeared in his notebooks. Many of these designs could not function with contemporary materials or manpower, but they demonstrated principles of mechanics, geometry, and strategy that were centuries ahead of their time. He understood that armor deflection, projectile trajectory, and force distribution could be manipulated to achieve tactical advantage, yet he also appreciated the moral dimension of his inventions. Some historians suggest that Leonardo deliberately rendered mechanisms inoperable, embedding subtle errors, to prevent their misuse in actual warfare. His ethical awareness coexisted with his technical genius, creating a tension between invention and application that characterized much of his work. Anatomy was another domain where Leonardo transcended the knowledge of his contemporaries. His dissections of human cadavers, often carried out in secrecy, produced some of the most detailed anatomical studies ever recorded. He illustrated the skeletal structure, muscles, tendons, the cardiovascular system, the brain, and internal organs with painstaking accuracy. Observing motion in muscles, the contraction of the heart, and the mechanics of joint movement, he combined observation with inference, developing a comprehensive understanding of physiology that would not be recognized formally until centuries later. Leonardo's anatomical studies were inseparable from his artistic pursuits. Each illustration reflected not only scientific precision but also a profound aesthetic sense, revealing the human body as a harmonious composition of form and function. In parallel with his scientific endeavors, Leonardo's artistry evolved, informed by his meticulous observation of nature and human anatomy. Paintings such as the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper reflect a fusion of technical mastery, psychological insight, and compositional innovation. His use of sfumato, the subtle gradation of tone, demonstrated his understanding of light, shadow, and perception, while his compositions revealed an awareness of geometry, perspective, and balance. Leonardo's art was inseparable from his science. The study of anatomy enhanced the realism of the human figure, observation of optics influenced the depiction of light and shadow, and his understanding of motion informed dynamic groupings of figures in narrative compositions. Throughout his life, Leonardo da Vinci maintained a relentless pursuit of knowledge across disciplines. He did not compartmentalize his interests but treated all inquiry as aspects of a single continuum. Mechanics, hydraulics, flight, anatomy, optics, painting, sculpture, music, and engineering coexisted as complementary elements of a single intellectual endeavor. His notebooks reveal not only the breadth of his interests but also a method of thinking characterized by careful observation, systematic documentation, experimentation, and the courage to envision possibilities beyond the limitations of contemporary technology. His genius was iterative, cumulative, and deeply integrative. A single insight in anatomy could inspire a mechanical design, a study of water flow could inform painting techniques, a sketch of a flying machine could lead to refined understanding of geometry. Leonardo's obsession with flight never truly ended, even when the ornithopters failed in practical testing, even when the aerial screw remained a theoretical impossibility, his fascination with birds, air, and the principles of lift remained central to his life. He meticulously observed the flight of swallows, hawks, and cranes, noting the way they adjusted their wings midair, how they turned, dove, and caught the wind. These observations were not casual sketches, they were careful experiments in mechanics disguised as naturalist study. In his notebooks, he drew birds in mid-motion, feathers spread, wings bent at precise angles, annotating diagrams with calculations of angles, leverage, and force distribution. He understood intuitively that flight was not a simple act of flapping limbs, but a complex interaction between pressure, motion, and resistance, an understanding centuries ahead of formal physics. While aviation dominated his imagination, Leonardo's curiosity was never constrained to the sky. Water was equally compelling, a fluid labyrinth of motion, pressure, and force. He studied rivers, waterfalls, and eddies, observing how water pushed against rocks, how currents swirled and merged. These studies fed directly into his engineering projects: canals to redirect water, locks for navigation, water wheels for mechanical power. Every sketch revealed his mind's ability to translate observation into practical application. He designed complex hydraulic machines, such as water-lifting devices that could irrigate fields or supply entire towns. Though the technology of the 15th century could not fully realize some of his more ambitious designs, his conceptual grasp of water pressure, flow, and mechanical advantage was complete. And yet, he also approached water with the artist's eye. His sketches of rivers, rapids, and waterfalls were as much studies in light, shadow, and motion as they were mechanical schematics. Science and art were never separate in Leonardo's mind, they were reflections of the same truth. Leonardo's ventures into warfare were no less inventive. While he loathed the brutality of war, he also understood its inevitability, and he designed accordingly. The armored tank, the giant crossbow, and multi-barreled weapons reflected not only ingenuity but a playful audacity. He experimented with gears, pulleys, and levers, imagining machines capable of simultaneously striking fear and delivering devastating firepower. In many cases, the designs were functionally impossible given the materials and manpower of the time. Yet they demonstrate his extraordinary capacity for visualization. He could anticipate mechanical interactions, force distribution, and the consequences of mass and motion in a way that only centuries of engineering study could replicate. The genius of Leonardo lay not only in creating functioning devices, but in conceptualizing systems of such complexity that they pushed the boundaries of human imagination. In parallel, his anatomical work transformed the understanding of the human body. Leonardo dissected cadavers with unprecedented detail, noting the structure of bones, the arrangement of muscles, the pathways of nerves and blood vessels. He understood the mechanics of movement, how joints functioned, how muscles contracted, how tendons transmitted force. His studies of the heart revealed the nature of valves and circulation long before these concepts were formally recognized. Eyes, ears, and the brain were subjects of intricate study, each organ examined for structure and function. Leonardo's drawings combined scientific precision with aesthetic insight, capturing not just form but purpose, revealing the elegance of human anatomy. The integration of art and science is evident in these studies. He could measure, annotate, and render a skeleton in motion as convincingly as he could paint the subtle expression of a subject in a portrait. The Renaissance itself became Leonardo's laboratory. Cities like Florence and Milan offered him patrons who, while requesting paintings or sculptures, inadvertently funded his experiments in engineering, anatomy, and mechanics. Life in these courts provided a platform to observe society, politics, and human behavior. Leonardo's notebooks reveal endless sketches of architectural plans, urban planning ideas, and civil engineering proposals. Bridges that could float on pontoons, canals connecting rivers for trade, systems to control flooding, all these were not fanciful, they were practical solutions grounded in observation, mathematics, and applied mechanics. Even the simplest sketches, pulleys, levers, water wheels, demonstrate a mind continuously engaged in problem-solving, seeking patterns, connections, and improvements in the natural and human-made world. Leonardo's artistic endeavors cannot be separated from his scientific work. Every brushstroke in the Mona Lisa, every compositional choice in The Last Supper, reflects his profound understanding of perspective, anatomy, and human emotion. The soft transitions of light and shadow, the realism of hands, the subtle expressions, all reveal a deep comprehension of how humans perceive the world. His art was not merely representational, it was analytical. Each subject, each pose, each gesture was a study in proportion, mechanics, and psychology. In this way, Leonardo bridged observation and imagination. The same mind that calculated lift, torque, and water pressure also captured the infinite complexity of human expression on canvas. Leonardo's notebooks, thousands of pages preserved in fragments across centuries, reveal the scope of a mind constantly questioning, hypothesizing, and experimenting. Every invention, every anatomical study, every sketch of a river, a bird, or a mechanical device is a thread in a continuous tapestry. Time, for Leonardo, was not linear. Experiments built upon experiments, observations accumulated, ideas cross-pollinated. Flight inspired anatomy, water inspired mechanics, geometry informed painting. His curiosity knew no bounds, and his pursuit of understanding extended from the minute detail of a human hand to the vast flow of rivers, from the trajectory of projectiles to the impossible ambition of soaring machines. Even in his later years, Leonardo remained insatiably curious. His final sketches contain ideas for hydraulic pumps, city planning, war machines, and mechanical devices designed for both utility and spectacle. Nothing was beyond his reach. Nothing escaped observation. His genius was iterative, experimental, and continuous. Failures were data, impossibilities were invitations. The boundaries of his era did not define him, they challenged him. He left the world not just with paintings and inventions, but with a philosophy, that relentless curiosity, integrated observation, and fearless imagination could transcend time, technology, and human limitation. And so, Leonardo da Vinci's life was not a series of discrete achievements. It was a flowing continuum, a meditation on possibility, a dialogue between human ambition and natural law, an exploration of what it means to observe, understand, and create. In the sketches of a flying machine, the notes on water, the anatomical dissections, the conceptual tanks, and the unfinished paintings, he recorded not just the world, but the very process of knowing it. Leonardo's legacy is less about the inventions realized and more about the possibilities imagined, the relentless inquiry, and the refusal to accept limits imposed by society, materials, or convention. Leonardo's curiosity didn't stop at machines and anatomy. He studied optics, fascinated by how light entered the eye, bent through water, and reflected off surfaces. He dissected eyeballs to understand the lens, retina, and cornea, sketching cross-sections with incredible detail. He experimented with mirrors, lenses, and camera obscuras, trying to reproduce the way humans perceive the world. His studies of perspective were not just artistic, they were mathematical. He calculated vanishing points, angles, and proportions, applying geometry to painting to capture reality in a precise, almost scientific manner. Every shadow in the Mona Lisa, every receding corridor in The Last Supper, was the product of rigorous observation and experimentation. Leonardo's understanding of optics predated formal scientific studies by centuries, blending art, physics, and psychology into a single vision of perception. Botany captivated him as well. Leonardo studied plants not merely for decoration but for structure, mechanics, and adaptation. He dissected stems, leaves, and roots to understand growth patterns and structural integrity. He noticed the Fibonacci sequence in leaves, the spiral arrangement of seeds and flowers, and the way vines twisted for support. These observations influenced his mechanical designs. Spirals, levers, and gears often mirrored patterns in nature. Leonardo didn't see humans and machines as separate from the natural world, they were part of the same system, obeying the same principles of physics, geometry, and efficiency. His studies of fluid dynamics, both in water and air, drew inspiration from rivers and winds, swirls of smoke, and flocks of birds in flight. Nature was the ultimate teacher, and Leonardo the obsessive student. Medicine and anatomy remained central. Leonardo dissected bodies at night, often in secret due to religious and legal prohibitions. He carefully documented skeletal structure, musculature, organ systems, and vascular networks. His anatomical sketches were groundbreaking. He drew the heart in motion, showing blood flow, valves, and contraction. He mapped the spine, understanding curvature and articulation. He explored facial musculature to capture expression. These studies were more than artistic exercises, they were scientific experiments. Leonardo measured proportions, angles of movement, and functional mechanics, blending empirical observation with artistic representation. His notebooks contained instructions on how muscles contracted, how ligaments supported bones, and how pressure applied at specific points could manipulate the human body. Centuries later, physicians and anatomists would validate much of his work. Leonardo's approach to engineering extended beyond machines for war or flight. He designed bridges, canals, locks, and fortifications with incredible foresight. Some bridges, such as the ambitious single-span concept for Istanbul, would have been structurally sound if built, even centuries later. He conceived innovative canal systems for irrigation, flood control, and transportation, thinking in terms of hydrodynamics, materials, and human labor. His understanding of mechanical advantage extended to pulleys, gears, counterweights, and hoists. Even simple devices, like lifting mechanisms or water wheels, were analyzed with precision and recorded with diagrams that were simultaneously functional, aesthetic, and mathematically accurate. Leonardo's engineering philosophy was holistic. Machines were not isolated objects but part of an ecosystem of motion, force, and utility. He also studied sound and music. Leonardo created musical instruments, some entirely new, others modified for mechanical efficiency or tonal richness. He experimented with strings, resonance, airflow, and vibration, applying the same principles of observation he used in anatomy and flight. Instruments like the viola organista, which translated keyboard motion into bowed strings, reflected his desire to unify mechanics and artistry. Music, to Leonardo, was not entertainment, it was physics made audible, another manifestation of nature's order. Even mundane objects were studied rigorously. He examined the motion of water clocks, the mechanics of pulleys and screws, and the behavior of gears under stress. Every observation, no matter how minor, could become the seed of an invention. His relentless curiosity was unbounded, flowing from practical necessity to theoretical possibility, and then spiraling into creative exploration. Nothing escaped his attention. Shadows, reflections, wind currents, the flow of blood, everything was a problem to solve and a lesson to learn. Patrons, such as Ludovico Sforza in Milan, provided both opportunity and distraction. Leonardo's projects for them ranged from sculptures to city fortifications, from waterworks to war machines. While some patrons grew impatient with his slow pace, Leonardo's mind was always moving faster than any commission could contain. The delay in completion was not negligence, it was the nature of genius, constant iteration, refinement, and testing of ideas. Paintings, mechanical devices, architectural plans, anatomical studies, they all unfolded simultaneously in the laboratory of his mind. Everything was connected. Even Leonardo's notes and sketches reflect a mind obsessed with recording and understanding. Written in mirror script, they contained instructions, observations, diagrams, and musings, often in chaotic order. Some pages discuss hydraulics, while the next page details bird flight or human anatomy. He cross-referenced topics, wrote experiments to test hypotheses, and recorded failures as meticulously as successes. His notebooks were living documents, constantly evolving. They are evidence not just of what he knew, but how he thought, an unrelenting process of questioning, observing, hypothesizing, testing, and imagining. Finally, Leonardo's influence on future generations cannot be overstated. Every concept he explored, every device he sketched, and every anatomical study he documented became part of a foundation upon which future scientists, engineers, and artists built. Flight, anatomy, engineering, hydraulics, optics, all advanced centuries faster because of his vision. He transformed observation into understanding, imagination into possibility, and curiosity into legacy. Leonardo da Vinci lived and worked in a constant state of inquiry, blending art, science, and engineering into a seamless pursuit of knowledge. He was never satisfied with what was known, he sought what could be known. His genius was not just in invention or artistic creation, but in the unrelenting process of exploration. The sky, the sea, the human body, and the natural world were all challenges to study, understand, and transform. And while many of his machines remained theoretical, many of his artistic and anatomical studies remain unsurpassed. Leonardo da Vinci was not merely a man of his time, he was a mind centuries ahead, a human engine of observation, analysis, and imagination, whose work continues to inspire awe, curiosity, and wonder to this very day. Leonardo's obsession with mechanical motion went far beyond flight or military machines. He studied gears, levers, pulleys, and chains, analyzing how force could be transferred efficiently from one part of a system to another. For example, he sketched cranes capable of lifting massive stones for cathedral construction, inventing gear ratios centuries ahead of their time. Each drawing meticulously calculated leverage, weight distribution, and motion trajectory. He tested hypothetical stresses in his mind, imagining a stone beam snapping under too much weight or a pulley rope fraying mid-lift. This was his laboratory, mental and visual, where physics and imagination collided. Even though most machines were never built, the principles were sound. Modern engineers would recognize them instantly. Water, in particular, fascinated Leonardo. Milan was a city of canals, and Leonardo became obsessed with hydraulics. He designed locks, diversion systems, and water-lifting machines. He measured flow rates, currents, and eddies, attempting to predict how water would behave in constructed channels. He sketched mills powered by moving water, dam designs that could regulate entire rivers, and flood defenses that could save towns from seasonal inundation. Leonardo even imagined underwater tunneling, though Renaissance tools would have made it impossible. He observed that turbulence and vortex formation could influence boats and mills, noting details so precise that modern fluid dynamics textbooks echo his insights. His studies of water flow also influenced his art. He understood how light refracted in water, how ripples propagate, and how reflections shift with motion. This knowledge informed the exquisite rivers, fountains, and washes in his paintings, blending scientific observation with artistic mastery. Leonardo's study of anatomy also continued relentlessly. Beyond dissecting human cadavers, he compared them with animal anatomy, believing that understanding structure across species revealed universal laws. He dissected cows, pigs, and birds, documenting similarities in muscle, bone, and organ function. He meticulously recorded how tendons moved, how ligaments stabilized joints, and how muscles contracted to produce motion. One notebook reveals his experiments with joint articulation, trying to map the limits of flexibility and mechanical leverage in the human body. He measured angles of movement, force required for different actions, and even predicted how injuries could impair function. He understood biomechanics at a level only formally recognized centuries later. Leonardo also approached painting as a scientific endeavor. He meticulously studied perspective, light, shadow, and color. He experimented with chiaroscuro to create three-dimensional effects on flat surfaces, inventing techniques for gradual tonal transitions. He analyzed how light refracted through lenses and water droplets, how atmospheric haze affected distant objects, and how skin tones varied under different lighting. For him, painting was not only art but physics applied visually. Every brushstroke was an observation, every color a calculated experiment. His obsession with flight and birds persisted throughout his life. Beyond the ornithopter and aerial screw, he studied wing morphology, tail dynamics, and the role of air currents in lift. He observed gliding birds, particularly eagles and hawks, noting how they adjusted feathers and tails to control descent. He theorized that humans might one day replicate these mechanisms using mechanical wings, though he fully understood human muscle limitations. His notebooks described testing models with wooden frames, linen wings, and counterweights, including careful attention to balance, center of gravity, and wing shape. Leonardo's flight studies laid the conceptual foundation for modern aerodynamics. Even everyday objects drew his analytical attention. He studied locks, hinges, doors, and water wheels, analyzing friction, wear, and efficiency. He sketched mechanical devices for printing and stamping, envisioning labor-saving inventions. He imagined automated mills, programmable tools, and mechanisms powered by water or human motion. While his ideas often outpaced technology, the principles behind them were robust. Leonardo's genius was in seeing connections between natural laws and human-made devices, anticipating solutions centuries before materials or engines existed. In the realm of music, Leonardo continued merging art and mechanics. Instruments like the viola organista exemplify his ability to combine bowing techniques with keyboard precision. He studied resonance, pitch, and string tension mathematically, designing instruments for tonal accuracy and expressive range. His interest in vibrations extended to experiments with pendulums, bells, and water sound. Sound, like light and motion, was another layer of the natural world to dissect and understand. Leonardo also delved into military engineering, but always with a vision beyond destruction. His fortifications, moats, and bridge designs were advanced, anticipating artillery and siege techniques. He designed angled walls, ramparts, and rotating drawbridges to maximize defense efficiency. Even his cannons and gun carriages reflected careful consideration of recoil, trajectory, and balance. Yet he often incorporated safety features, traps, or deterrents to prevent misuse, reflecting both genius and ethical restraint. Throughout all of this, Leonardo's personal habits were unusual. He often worked late into the night, consumed minimal sleep, and wrote in mirror script. His notebooks record multiple projects simultaneously, jumping between flight, anatomy, engineering, music, and art within a single page. He was meticulous, obsessive, and wildly imaginative. His patronage system both enabled and constrained him. Commissions provided resources, but he often redirected them toward experiments that satisfied curiosity rather than immediate utility. Patrons tolerated delays because the results, paintings, inventions, insights, were extraordinary. Leonardo da Vinci's life exemplifies the integration of observation, art, science, and invention. He studied everything: air, water, light, the human body, birds, plants, machines, interconnecting them through observation and experimentation. He left behind thousands of pages of sketches, notes, and designs, many unfinished, all demonstrating a mind that could not stop questioning. His genius lies not only in his accomplishments but in his relentless curiosity, interdisciplinary thinking, and visionary foresight. Centuries later, engineers, anatomists, and artists still study his work for inspiration, proof, and occasionally, sheer bewilderment. Leonardo's obsession with bridges and city infrastructure was as intense as his interest in flight. He didn't see bridges merely as structures for crossing rivers; they were engineering challenges to be studied, optimized, and improved. He designed self-supporting arches, movable drawbridges, and floating pontoons, sketching every angle, every load-bearing calculation, every tension point. Unlike most builders of the time, who relied on tradition, Leonardo relied on observation, experimentation, and mathematics. He watched rivers flow, noted how currents eroded banks, and imagined bridges that would withstand centuries of floods. One famous design was a single-arch bridge spanning a full river, elegant and minimal, with no piers in the water. It was never built, yet engineers today confirm it could have worked. Leonardo imagined permanence in a world accustomed to temporary fixes. Water fascinated him beyond bridges. In his hydraulic studies, he considered canal systems that could divert rivers, irrigate fields, and even supply cities with running water. His notebooks reveal designs for water-lifting devices, siphons, and pumps, some powered by human effort, others by flowing water. He measured flow rates, tested friction in pipes, and even theorized about turbulent versus laminar flow, centuries before the formal science of fluid dynamics existed. These were not idle sketches; they were practical solutions for cities struggling with floods, stagnant water, and sanitation. Leonardo understood that controlling water meant controlling life itself; crops, trade, hygiene, and survival depended on it. Leonardo's fascination with human anatomy went far beyond curiosity. He dissected dozens of cadavers, meticulously recording the structure of muscles, tendons, bones, and organs. Each observation was paired with sketches that combined artistic precision with scientific rigor. He measured muscle contraction, joint articulation, and the mechanics of movement, essentially performing what we now call biomechanics. He compared human anatomy to animal anatomy, believing that similarities across species could reveal universal principles of life. He even explored the circulatory system, noting heart valves and blood flow with uncanny accuracy, centuries before William Harvey formally described circulation. His understanding of anatomy influenced his art profoundly, allowing him to paint figures with natural posture, accurate proportions, and dynamic motion that still astonishes viewers today. Art and science were inseparable for Leonardo. He applied the principles of observation and experimentation to his painting. His use of chiaroscuro, the contrast of light and dark, wasn't merely stylistic, it was scientific. He understood how light reflected off surfaces, how shadows softened, how depth perception altered with atmospheric haze. He studied perspective mathematically, calculating vanishing points and proportions with precision. Paintings like The Last Supper and Mona Lisa reflect this obsessive attention to detail. Every fold of fabric, every facial expression, every background horizon results from careful study of optics, geometry, and human emotion. Leonardo's flight studies were relentless. Beyond the ornithopter and aerial screw, he analyzed wing dynamics, feather arrangement, and tail control, observing birds in real environments. He sketched gliding eagles and hawks, noting how minor changes in wing tilt affected lift and maneuverability. His notebooks contain diagrams of winged machines with flapping mechanisms, pulleys, and counterweights, illustrating attempts to replicate avian flight using human muscle. Though impossible for humans to power unaided, these sketches reveal Leonardo's ability to abstract natural laws into mechanical designs, a foundational concept for modern engineering. Water and flight weren't his only obsessions. Leonardo experimented with sound, vibrations, and musical mechanics. He studied resonance, pitch, and string tension, designing instruments like the viola organista, which combined bowing techniques with keyboard mechanics. He observed how sound waves traveled through air and materials, even theorizing about echo, amplification, and vibration harmonics. In his mind, sound was another puzzle to be dissected scientifically. Leonardo's military inventions were ambitious and often theatrical. His armored tank combined sloped plating, rotating cannons, and internal gear mechanisms to provide both offense and defense. While impractical with Renaissance materials, the conceptual brilliance was undeniable. His giant crossbows could theoretically hurl massive bolts, designed with meticulous attention to tension, leverage, and projectile trajectory. The 33-barrel organ gun, designed to fire multiple muskets simultaneously, anticipated modern rapid-fire weapons. These designs, while never fully realized in his lifetime, illustrate Leonardo's approach. He visualized mechanical principles far beyond contemporary technology, knowing execution would lag behind imagination. Daily life in Renaissance Florence provided the backdrop for Leonardo's genius. The city thrived on commerce, art, science, and political intrigue. Wealthy patrons, like Ludovico Sforza in Milan, funded ambitious projects, cathedrals, canals, sculptures, offering Leonardo both resources and constraints. He leveraged these opportunities, sometimes delivering commissioned works slowly, diverting time to experiments that satisfied curiosity rather than immediate patron demands. Yet, his reputation allowed him freedom. Delays were tolerated because the results, paintings, innovations, studies, were extraordinary. Leonardo's personal habits were extreme. He often worked at night, slept minimally, and juggled multiple projects. His notebooks, written in mirror script, contained overlapping studies of mechanics, anatomy, hydrodynamics, and art. Pages show sketches of bridges beside flying machines, human muscles beside weapons, and water flow diagrams beside musical instruments. This demonstrates a mind that refused compartmentalization, seeing interconnections between fields centuries before interdisciplinary thinking became a buzzword. One of Leonardo's remarkable traits was his philosophical curiosity about nature. He studied light, shadow, water, air, motion, anatomy, and human behavior, attempting to extract universal laws from observation. Nothing was trivial. A leaf floating on water, a bird gliding in the sky, a muscle contracting, each was a lesson in principles that could be applied across mechanics, hydraulics, anatomy, and art. In conclusion, Leonardo da Vinci exemplifies the Renaissance ideal, a mind without boundaries, merging art, science, and engineering into a single continuum of observation and creativity. His inventions, while often impractical, reveal timeless principles. His studies of human anatomy prefigured modern medicine. His exploration of flight anticipated aviation. His mechanical devices foreshadowed modern engineering. And his art remains a testament to the marriage of observation, technique, and imagination. Leonardo didn't just invent machines, he invented a methodology for thinking about the world itself, a system that continues to inspire, bewilder, and challenge humanity even 500 years later. Leonardo's obsession with human anatomy was relentless, driven by a desire to understand the mechanics of life itself. He dissected cadavers in secrecy, often at night, because the church frowned upon such practices. Yet for Leonardo, the human body was a mechanical marvel, a machine designed with exquisite precision. He observed how tendons pulled bones, how muscles contracted, how joints rotated, and how the heart pushed blood through the body. Every observation was recorded in meticulous sketches, annotated with measurements, angles, and hypotheses about function. He compared human anatomy to that of birds, horses, and other animals, searching for universal patterns that governed all living things. He explored the skeleton first, noting how each bone connected and the leverage points created by joints. He sketched the spine with astonishing accuracy, observing the natural curvature and its role in balance and movement. He measured the angles of femurs, tibias, and arms, attempting to calculate the force generated by muscles. These sketches were not artistic embellishments, they were engineering diagrams for the human machine. Next came the muscles. Leonardo peeled back layers, carefully documenting each muscle group, noting origin, insertion points, and mechanical function. He realized that movement was a system of levers and pulleys, and that understanding this could improve art, medicine, and even prosthetic design. He drew hands in every position, from resting to gripping, capturing the subtle tension and extension that made human motion so complex. His fascination with the heart and circulation predated William Harvey by over a century. Leonardo observed the valves inside the heart, sketching how blood flowed and how pressure worked. Though he didn't have the tools to fully test his hypotheses, his insights were extraordinary. He recorded the mechanics of respiration, noting how the diaphragm and chest cavity expanded and contracted. He studied the lungs, trachea, and even the bronchial passages, recognizing the importance of airflow for sustaining life. Leonardo's anatomical sketches were intertwined with artistic application. His deep understanding of muscles and joints allowed him to depict humans in motion with unprecedented realism. In the Mona Lisa, the subtle tension in her hands, the graceful tilt of her head, the soft curve of her shoulders, all reflect his anatomical studies. He understood how the body moves under its own weight, how light interacts with form, and how posture conveys emotion. Art and science were inseparable, every stroke of his brush was informed by careful observation of nature. But Leonardo didn't stop at observation. He experimented. He constructed mechanical models of limbs, using wood, string, and metal to simulate muscle movement. He tested the leverage of joints and even experimented with force required to lift objects or bend the human body. These studies were practical explorations of mechanics, yet they read like a Renaissance version of a mad scientist's lab notebook. His curiosity extended to the brain and senses. He dissected eyes to understand vision, tracing the optic nerve and studying how light focuses on the retina. He examined the ear's structure, exploring how vibration translates to sound perception. Leonardo considered the skin's role in sensing pressure and temperature, imagining the body as a network of sensors and mechanical responses. His study of the nervous system, while incomplete by modern standards, was centuries ahead of its time. Leonardo's personal life reflected his obsessive curiosity. He often worked through the night, ignoring meals, sleep, and social obligations. He alternated between painting, engineering, anatomy, and philosophy, connecting ideas across disciplines. His notebooks reveal tangential thoughts, sketches of water currents alongside flying machines, or studies of horses next to mechanical gears. He sought to understand the universe by understanding patterns, from the tiniest muscle fiber to the flow of rivers. Despite his genius, Leonardo struggled with completion. Many of his paintings remained unfinished, many machines never built, many hypotheses untested. Yet this was not failure, it was the nature of a mind too vast for one lifetime. Every sketch, every note, every half-built device represented a seed of knowledge, influencing centuries of science, engineering, and art. Leonardo also applied his scientific observations to daily life. He designed intricate water systems for cities, proposing canals that could irrigate fields, supply fresh water, or defend against flooding. He considered sanitation, drainage, and even urban planning, envisioning self-sustaining cities centuries before modern engineering made it possible. He sketched aqueducts, locks, and water wheels, sometimes as functional designs, sometimes as thought experiments. His fascination with mechanical devices was relentless. Leonardo designed gears, pulleys, and rotating platforms, many intended for warfare, others for entertainment or practical purposes. His clock designs incorporated precise gearing and escapements, exploring the measurement of time mechanically rather than astronomically. He sketched automata, mechanical figures that could move and perform tasks, merging art with engineering. These devices were predecessors to robotics, demonstrating his understanding of motion, leverage, and mechanical logic. Even Leonardo's exploration of flight, water, and warfare shared a common theme. He sought to translate observation into possibility. He saw patterns in nature, how birds glide, how water flows, how muscles contract, and imagined human-made systems that could replicate or harness these forces. Each invention, whether practical or impossible, was a thought experiment pushed to the extreme, a manifestation of curiosity that refused limitation. Daily life around Leonardo further enriched his observations. In Florence, a bustling Renaissance city, he witnessed trade, politics, art, and science intersect. Wealthy patrons funded ambitious projects, yet their demands often clashed with Leonardo's interests. He navigated this tension, sometimes fulfilling commissions, sometimes diverting attention to experiments that fascinated him. He learned negotiation, improvisation, and strategic patience, skills as critical to his legacy as any machine or painting. Leonardo da Vinci was not merely an inventor, painter, or anatomist. He was a mind that defied boundaries, integrating art, science, and philosophy into a single continuum of observation and creativity. His legacy is a testament to the power of curiosity, the importance of experimentation, and the audacity of imagination. Every sketch, note, and unfinished project is a window into a mind that challenged the limits of what humans could conceive, centuries before the technology existed to make those dreams real. Life in Renaissance Florence was a chaotic ballet of commerce, art, politics, and intrigue, and Leonardo thrived in it like a cat in a sunbeam. Streets smelled of fresh bread, tanneries, and occasionally the aftermath of a poorly organized festival. Merchants shouted their wares, guilds enforced their craft, and the Medicis funded extravagant projects that blurred the line between civic pride and vanity. Into this vibrant, noisy, endlessly stimulating environment walked Leonardo, notebook in hand, sketching everything from cartwheels to horse hooves with equal intensity. Every object, every face, every river ripple was a problem to solve or a pattern to record. Horses in the streets fascinated him. They were not just transportation but mechanisms of motion. He dissected horses, measured leg angles, and calculated force and leverage to understand not just anatomy but how to make them move faster, lift heavier, or survive battle. His notebooks contain sketches of horse harnesses, pulleys, and even designs for mechanical horse statues that could move autonomously, a precursor to robotics, intended both to amuse and to demonstrate engineering mastery. Leonardo's daily schedule was, by modern standards, unmanageable. He often rose before dawn, spent hours walking the city streets observing humans and animals, then moved into workshops or patron studios. Meals were secondary, sleep was optional, and social niceties were mostly ignored unless they involved gathering information or testing an idea. He frequently combined disciplines, sketching the mechanics of a water wheel while calculating the optimal proportions for a painting he hadn't yet begun. His notebooks reveal side-by-side studies of water flow, human musculature, cloud formations, and mechanical gear systems, as if reality were a single puzzle that had to be solved in every dimension simultaneously. Patronage played a pivotal role in Leonardo's life. The Medici family, along with various dukes and military leaders, commissioned works that were sometimes artistic, sometimes practical, and sometimes downright bizarre. A request for a painting could easily result in Leonardo delivering a design for a fortified city, a war machine, or a musical instrument. Patrons often tolerated his diversions because they recognized that Leonardo's ideas, even the impossible ones, reflected genius, and in Renaissance culture, genius was currency. Amid all this, Leonardo maintained his obsession with engineering and mechanics. Bridges, canals, locks, and fortifications were frequent subjects. He studied water behavior in rivers and canals, sketching vortices, turbulence, and flow patterns. These observations informed his engineering projects: bridges that could resist floods, water wheels that maximized energy transfer, and canal systems designed to move goods efficiently. Each design balanced practicality with creative flair, as if function and beauty were inseparable. Leonardo's anatomical pursuits grew ever more detailed. He observed muscle contraction in living humans, often sketching people walking, lifting, or gesturing, then comparing those motions to his cadaver studies. He hypothesized how tendons transferred force, how joints allowed rotation, and how the body could generate power efficiently. He experimented with mechanical models, wooden arms, pulleys, and levers, to simulate muscle action, testing theories on movement before even touching paint or metal. This blend of observation, experiment, and theoretical modeling was centuries ahead of his time. Beyond mechanics and anatomy, Leonardo also investigated optics, light, and perspective. He experimented with mirrors, lenses, and reflected light to understand how vision perceives the world, insights that would inform both painting and scientific thought. He observed how shadows fell on different surfaces, how reflections distorted objects, and how light interacted with texture. These studies were not purely artistic, they were attempts to decode the universe itself. Yet for all his genius, Leonardo's life was not without frustration and isolation. Many contemporaries found him eccentric or impractical. His habit of leaving projects unfinished, sketching endlessly without immediate application, and pursuing tangents frustrated patrons and collaborators alike. Still, Leonardo thrived in this liminal space between genius and madness, because for him, the act of thinking, experimenting, and recording was as important as the result. Leonardo also delved into human psychology and behavior, observing interactions in workshops, streets, and marketplaces. He noted facial expressions, gestures, posture, and emotional responses, sketching hundreds of subtle variations. These observations informed his paintings, allowing him to capture nuanced emotion and human character in ways that still resonate today. One of his less discussed yet fascinating pursuits was hydrodynamics. Leonardo studied rivers, eddies, and waterfalls, noting how water interacted with obstacles. He sketched diagrams of whirlpools, currents, and eddies, theorizing how to control or harness water for human use. Canals, flood control, irrigation, and even military moats were analyzed with mathematical rigor, yet his sketches retained artistic elegance, blurring the line between science and art. Leonardo's curiosity extended to the heavens. Though pre-telescope, he observed stars, planets, and the moon, noting positions, motion, and phases. His sketches of lunar surfaces and planetary motion were conceptually revolutionary, laying groundwork for the astronomical observations that would follow centuries later. He speculated about the structure of the solar system, the possibility of lunar mountains, and the interplay of gravity and motion, ideas that were not merely scientific but imaginative, pushing the limits of contemporary understanding. Through all these endeavors, Leonardo da Vinci's mind remained a continuous engine, synthesizing art, science, engineering, and philosophy into a single pursuit, understanding the world through observation, experimentation, and imagination. Each day was a lab, each sketch a hypothesis, each unfinished project a seed for future discovery. His notebooks are not just documents, they are a living dialogue between a man and the universe, spanning mechanics, anatomy, hydrodynamics, optics, flight, and philosophy. Leonardo's mind didn't simply observe the world, it interrogated it relentlessly. Every object, motion, and pattern was a question waiting for an answer. Streets, bridges, canals, statues, markets, cathedrals, none escaped his scrutiny. He measured angles, recorded shadows, sketched proportions, and noted forces. In Florence, a city alive with merchants, artists, and scholars, this made him both indispensable and infuriating that he would wander into workshops unannounced, sketch a sculptor's technique, then suggest improvements that no craftsman had ever imagined, or wanted. His fascination with engineering extended to practical urban improvements. Streets prone to flooding. Leonardo designed systems of canals, sluices, and levees, sketching them with precision and imagining how water would flow over cobblestones, through arches, and around mills. He studied bridges that could be quickly constructed or dismantled in wartime, including a famous design for a single-arch bridge over the Golden Horn, centuries before anyone had the engineering tools to build it. But Leonardo's genius wasn't limited to practical or theoretical work. He also explored human emotion and perception like no other. He believed that a painting should not only depict reality but also reveal the mechanics of thought and feeling. Every line, shadow, and gesture had purpose. The Mona Lisa's enigmatic smile. That is Leonardo's psychological experiment captured in oil. The way eyes follow the viewer. Calculated. Hands, posture, gaze, everything was engineered to convey subtle truths about consciousness, emotion, and moral character. He wanted the viewer not just to see but to feel, to interact, almost like a controlled social experiment spanning centuries. Leonardo's anatomical studies grew ever more audacious. He dissected human cadavers, documenting muscles, tendons, veins, arteries, and bones with meticulous accuracy. But he didn't stop at the surface. He traced the heart's chambers, the curvature of the spine, the path of nerves, creating diagrams so advanced that some were rediscovered only centuries later. He hypothesized about how blood circulated, long before William Harvey confirmed the system. He studied joints and muscle leverage, proposing prosthetics and mechanical aids that could augment human movement. Leonardo also explored animal anatomy for comparison. Birds, horses, fish, and reptiles were sketched with the same rigor as humans. He believed that understanding animals would help unlock the secrets of motion, muscle function, and, ultimately, flight. His sketches of bird wings, in particular, informed his flying machine designs. Observing feather placement, wing curvature, and joint articulation, he combined natural insight with mechanical reasoning, producing ornithopters and gliders that were conceptually sound but mechanically constrained by human strength. Speaking of flight, Leonardo's obsession with soaring extended beyond gliders and wings. He drew detailed studies of air currents, turbulence, and vortex formation, often using water as a model. Streams, waterfalls, and whirlpools became living laboratories. He theorized that by understanding the patterns of fluid movement, humans could manipulate air and water alike. These studies informed not just flying machines but also designs for pumps, water mills, and canal systems. Leonardo was constantly bridging art, nature, and mechanics, recognizing that beauty and function were inseparable. Leonardo's notebooks reveal another obsession: time and measurement. He sketched clocks, water-driven devices, and mechanisms to record intervals of motion. He designed instruments that measured speed, force, and trajectory, anticipating principles of physics centuries before formal laws were codified. He imagined machines that could predict tides, control water flow, or even record celestial movement, blending observation with predictive modeling. Even in warfare, Leonardo sought elegance over mere destruction. His armored vehicles, giant crossbows, and multi-barrel firearms were as much exercises in geometry and mechanics as they were weapons. He theorized about ballistics, leverage, and rotation, often testing concepts with scale models. His goal was to optimize efficiency and effectiveness, marrying the precision of engineering with the chaos of combat. Yet, many of these machines were impossible with contemporary materials, and Leonardo likely anticipated that reality would lag behind imagination. Still, the designs demonstrated principles of leverage, armor, and mechanical coordination that would influence engineers for centuries. Beyond machines and anatomy, Leonardo's scientific curiosity extended to light and vision. He experimented with mirrors, lenses, and refraction, understanding how the eye perceives depth, color, and form. He hypothesized about the behavior of light on surfaces, reflection in water, and shadow casting, combining observation with artistic application. These studies informed both his painting and engineering, as he realized that understanding perception was key to communication, deception, and realism. Yet, Leonardo's life wasn't purely intellectual. He had social relationships, rivalries, and personal habits that shaped his work. He engaged with contemporaries like Michelangelo, Botticelli, and Bramante, exchanging ideas, challenging assumptions, and occasionally competing for commissions. He often wrote in mirror script, perhaps as a security measure, intellectual exercise, or playful eccentricity. His notebooks were personal, yet intended to record observations for posterity, a blend of diary, laboratory, and instruction manual. Daily life for Leonardo blended observation, recreation, and experimentation. He wandered streets, observed markets, drew horses and humans in motion, dissected animals or corpses, tested flight mechanisms, and occasionally painted masterpieces. He ate sparingly, slept irregularly, and worked obsessively. His attention to detail extended to handwriting, sketches, and the arrangement of ideas, revealing a mind that saw the universe as an interconnected system of patterns waiting to be mapped. Leonardo's influence was profound. Even unfinished works, sketches, and inventions contributed to future understanding of anatomy, flight, engineering, and optics. He demonstrated that genius is not just mastery of current knowledge but the ability to see beyond the constraints of one's era, blending curiosity, observation, creativity, and relentless experimentation. As Leonardo aged, his curiosity never waned, in fact, it intensified. Time became both an ally and a rival. He traveled to Milan, Rome, and eventually France, carrying his notebooks like treasure chests of forbidden knowledge. His work for Ludovico Sforza in Milan involved painting, architecture, military engineering, and stagecraft. Here, he designed complex theatrical machinery, elaborate parade floats, and even mechanical lions that moved with lifelike grace. The Renaissance court was both a stage for his ingenuity and a laboratory for his eccentric genius. Even in these later years, Leonardo's anatomical studies deepened. He dissected bodies with meticulous precision, mapping not just the muscles and bones but the heart's valves, the circulatory flow, and the structure of the brain. He sketched the skull in cross-section, revealing the cranial cavity, ventricles, and subtle curvatures that dictated facial structure. He believed the eye was the window to the soul and the brain the seat of thought, centuries before neuroscience would confirm elements of his hypotheses. Leonardo's obsession with mechanical replication of human function grew more profound. He designed articulated robots, mechanical knights, and devices that mimicked human motion, complete with gears, pulleys, and levers that replicated walking, waving, and even jaw movement. These creations blurred the line between man and machine, imagining a world where mechanics could imitate life itself, a theme that resonates with robotics today. His understanding of natural patterns and growth extended beyond anatomy. Leonardo studied plants, rivers, and geological formations with the same rigor he applied to human and animal bodies. He documented tree branching, leaf patterns, root systems, and water erosion, noting how natural forces shaped life and landscape. He theorized about sedimentation, river meanders, and the impact of floods, integrating observation with geometry, physics, and predictive reasoning. Yet, Leonardo's life was not confined to theory. He experimented with pigments, perspective, and light in painting, constantly refining technique. He sought to capture atmospheric perspective, the diffusion of light, and the subtle gradation of shadow and color that would make figures appear lifelike. In his later paintings, this mastery is evident in works like the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper, where facial expressions, gestures, and spatial composition create a narrative that transcends canvas, communicating psychology, emotion, and divine order. Leonardo also struggled with mortality and impermanence, aware that time would outpace him. Yet, this awareness fueled his relentless experimentation. He often left projects unfinished, not from neglect but from a pursuit of perfection that could never be fully realized. Every sketch, every note, was part of an ongoing conversation with reality, an attempt to understand the mechanics of the universe before it slipped away. In France, under the patronage of King Francis I, Leonardo's influence expanded. He advised on canal systems, fortifications, and urban design, offering ideas centuries ahead of their time. Even in old age, he experimented with inventions, sketched ideas for perpetual motion, and theorized about flight and hydraulics. His notebooks reveal a mind constantly seeking patterns, laws, and connections that others could not perceive. Leonardo's legacy is the embodiment of Renaissance humanism, the belief that observation, experimentation, and creativity could bridge art and science. He demonstrated that genius lies not in specialization but in cross-pollination of disciplines, connecting anatomy to engineering, optics to painting, mechanics to music, and human emotion to mathematical proportion. His life is a blueprint for intellectual curiosity, persistence, and audacity. Even centuries later, engineers, artists, and scientists revisit Leonardo's notes. His concepts of flight, hydraulics, anatomy, and perspective continue to inspire modern technology and art. The precision of his anatomical drawings informs medical illustration, his understanding of human motion influences robotics, his studies of water and air dynamics guide fluid mechanics. What Leonardo imagined in the 15th century became the foundation for innovation far beyond his lifetime. Leonardo da Vinci, in essence, was a living bridge between imagination and reality. Every sketch, every note, every failed prototype is a testament to the human ability to question, to design, to dream. He illustrates the power of relentless observation, the necessity of curiosity, and the courage to challenge conventional wisdom. In Leonardo's world, nothing was impossible, not because technology existed, but because the mind dared to conceive it. And so, when we reflect on Leonardo, we don't just see an artist, an inventor, or a thinker. We see human potential unbounded by circumstance, a mind untethered by social expectation, and a spirit that dared to measure the universe with nothing but observation, imagination, and paper. In his life and work, Leonardo da Vinci invites us all to look, question, and imagine, to confront reality not as it is, but as it could be. Leonardo's architectural visions were as audacious as his flying machines. In Milan and Florence, he sketched bridges that could span entire rivers without support, inspired by natural arches and the geometry of bones. One design, a single-arch bridge over the Golden Horn in Constantinople, was never built, but centuries later, modern engineers recognized it could have worked. He analyzed load distribution, compression, and tension, imagining a bridge that could withstand floods, earthquakes, and the weight of armies marching in formation. For Leonardo, a bridge was not just a structure, it was an elegant solution to a social problem, a tangible expression of balance between art and engineering. His notebooks reveal urban planning concepts centuries ahead of their time. Leonardo envisioned canals to regulate flooding, streets designed for efficient traffic flow, and public buildings optimized for light, air, and human comfort. He understood that cities were living organisms, and the same principles that governed rivers, tree growth, and human anatomy could guide urban development. In his mind, civilization itself could be engineered with the same care as a mechanical device or a fresco. Mathematics became Leonardo's secret weapon. Proportion, symmetry, and geometry infused every creation. The Vitruvian Man is not merely an anatomical study, it is a manifesto of the Renaissance mind. By mapping human proportions to geometry, he bridged art, anatomy, and architecture, suggesting that the same universal laws govern both the human body and the cosmos. Every measurement, every line, every ratio was a meditation on order in a chaotic world. Leonardo's inventions, too, were underpinned by deep mathematical reasoning, the gear ratios of his tanks, the pulley systems in his cranes, the curvature of his bridges, all relied on precise calculation. Even when the materials of the 15th century could not realize his visions, the principles were sound. He worked as if the world were clay, shaping it with knowledge and imagination, unconstrained by technological limitations. He also experimented with hydraulic engineering on a remarkable scale. Leonardo designed water-lifting machines, canal locks, and flood prevention systems, some intended to irrigate farmland, others to defend cities from siege or enable naval movement. That I in his sketches, water is alive, it swirls, eddies, rises, and falls in predictable patterns, yet retains its untamable beauty. Leonardo observed and recorded with precision, aware that understanding natural forces was a prerequisite for controlling them. In his later years, Leonardo became increasingly philosophical. His notebooks contain reflections on mortality, the passage of time, and the pursuit of knowledge. He recognized that most inventions would never see construction, yet he valued the process of thinking, observing, and sketching as ends in themselves. For Leonardo, creation was both a dialogue with nature and a mirror reflecting human potential. Every mechanical bird, parachute, and tank was a question, what if? Even his studies of human anatomy became philosophical exercises. Leonardo dissected hundreds of cadavers, meticulously documenting muscles, bones, tendons, organs, and the circulatory system. But these drawings were not just for practical understanding, they were a meditation on life, structure, and mortality. He compared the human skeleton to architectural frameworks, the heart to a pump, the eye to a camera, drawing analogies that bridged biology, mechanics, and metaphysics. He explored the nervous system, speculated on the soul, and questioned how thought emerges from matter. Leonardo also experimented with optics and vision. He studied the way light reflects, refracts, and diffuses, observing the interplay of shadow and color. His studies of perspective revolutionized painting, allowing three-dimensional spaces to appear on flat surfaces. He invented devices to project images and observed camera obscura effects, understanding centuries before the invention of photography how light could be manipulated to capture reality. His pursuit of perfection in visual representation was inseparable from his scientific inquiries. The notebooks reveal a mind obsessed with interconnection. He explored bird flight alongside human anatomy, hydraulics alongside mechanical gears, and the flow of rivers alongside the circulation of blood. Everything was part of a unified system, a Renaissance vision of the universe as comprehensible through observation, measurement, and imagination. For Leonardo, boundaries between disciplines were artificial, art informed engineering, mathematics guided sculpture, and anatomy inspired mechanical design. Even in his personal life, Leonardo lived according to his curiosity. He observed animals with scientific rigor, measured tides, catalogued plants, and experimented with sound. He tested musical instruments, invented mechanical organs, and theorized about how vibrations could be transmitted through different materials. For Leonardo, life itself was a laboratory, every experience data, every observation a clue, every failure a lesson. Despite the brilliance, there was a tension between vision and reality. Many projects remained incomplete, bridges unbuilt, flying machines grounded, tanks unassembled. Yet the unfinished nature of his work is part of the legacy. Each sketch, diagram, and note carries potentiality, inviting future generations to imagine, refine, and build upon ideas centuries ahead of their time. Leonardo da Vinci taught the world that thinking boldly, sketching freely, and pursuing the impossible are as valuable as any completed masterpiece. By the time of his death in 1519 in Amboise, France, Leonardo had left behind an unparalleled intellectual inheritance. Thousands of pages of notes, sketches, and observations covered anatomy, mechanics, hydraulics, optics, flight, art, philosophy, and music. That he did not just contribute inventions, he provided a methodology: observe carefully, question relentlessly, record precisely, and imagine without constraint. Leonardo da Vinci's life demonstrates a continuity between curiosity and genius. The same mind that sketched delicate folds in fabric could design armored war machines, the same hand that painted human emotion could map the flow of rivers. In every page, every line, every experiment, he blurred the lines between art, science, and philosophy. The Renaissance was not merely a period of rediscovery, it was a stage for minds like Leonardo's, capable of redefining human understanding and inspiring centuries of innovation. Leonardo's enduring lesson is clear: the pursuit of knowledge is eternal, the imagination boundless, and the universe infinitely instructive. He invites us to explore, question, and dream, not only in the world of the possible but also in the realm of the conceivable. Even beyond mechanics and anatomy, Leonardo was obsessed with the study of motion. He observed water swirling in rivers, eddies forming around rocks, and currents flowing over canals, sketching each spiral with painstaking care. He dissected not just human bodies but also the principles of flow in nature, comparing the movement of water to the movement of air over wings, the bending of trees in wind, and even the path of blood through veins. For Leonardo, nothing existed in isolation. Every pattern, every motion, every change in pressure was a puzzle piece of the greater universe. His fascination with water wasn't merely theoretical. He designed canal locks, artificial waterways, and complex irrigation systems, intended to improve agriculture, prevent floods, and even enable naval operations in wartime. One ambitious project proposed draining swamps to reduce malaria, centuries before the germ theory of disease would justify the idea. Leonardo studied vortex formation, turbulence, and hydraulic pressure, sketching intricate spirals that resemble modern fluid dynamics diagrams. The depth of his observation was such that modern engineers often find his notes eerily accurate, despite lacking modern instruments, yet Leonardo's genius was not limited to science. His artistry and scientific observation were inseparable. In every page, every line, every experiment, he blurred the lines between art, science, and philosophy. The Renaissance was not merely a period of rediscovery, it was a stage for minds like Leonardo's, capable of redefining human understanding and inspiring centuries of innovation. Leonardo's enduring lesson is clear: the pursuit of knowledge is eternal, the imagination boundless, and the universe infinitely instructive. He invites us to explore, question, and dream, not only in the world of the possible but also in the realm of the conceivable. Even beyond mechanics and anatomy, Leonardo was obsessed with the study of motion. He observed water swirling in rivers, eddies forming around rocks, and currents flowing over canals, sketching each spiral with painstaking care. He dissected not just human bodies but also the principles of flow in nature, comparing the movement of water to the movement of air over wings, the bending of trees in wind, and even the path of blood through veins. For Leonardo, nothing existed in isolation. Every pattern, every motion, every change in pressure was a puzzle piece of the greater universe. His fascination with water wasn't merely theoretical. He designed canal locks, artificial waterways, and complex irrigation systems, intended to improve agriculture, prevent floods, and even enable naval operations in wartime. One ambitious project proposed draining swamps to reduce malaria, centuries before the germ theory of disease would justify the idea. Leonardo studied vortex formation, turbulence, and hydraulic pressure, sketching intricate spirals that resemble modern fluid dynamics diagrams. The depth of his observation was such that modern engineers often find his notes eerily accurate, despite lacking modern instruments, yet Leonardo's genius was not limited to science. His artistry and scientific observation were inseparable. He painted the Last Supper with precise perspective, arranging figures in a way that conveys emotional tension, spatial realism, and divine symmetry simultaneously. Every fold in a robe, every gesture of a hand, every gaze was informed by anatomical studies and deep understanding of human psychology. In the Mona Lisa, his mastery of sfumato, the soft blending of light and shadow, mimics the subtle gradations of air and light he observed in nature. Every painting becomes a laboratory for observation, a test of how light, form, and human perception interact. Leonardo's notebooks reveal an unquenchable curiosity about mechanical analogues to nature. He sketched gear systems inspired by bone joints, spring-loaded mechanisms mimicking muscle tension, and pulleys and levers designed as extensions of human physiology. He imagined robots and mechanical knights, capable of limited autonomous movement, powered by cranks and gears. These devices, while never built in his lifetime, were precursors to robotics, demonstrating an understanding of mechanics that would not be widely realized for centuries. His interest in flight continued unabated. Beyond the ornithopter and aerial screw, he studied parabolic trajectories, lift vectors, and wing flexibility. He sketched gliders with adjustable wing angles, considering how a pilot could shift weight to maneuver midair. Leonardo theorized about air resistance, turbulence, and vortex shedding, phenomena only scientifically described centuries later. Though humans of the 15th century lacked the materials and engines to achieve powered flight, Leonardo's vision laid the intellectual groundwork for modern aeronautics. Leonardo's anatomical studies went beyond static illustration that he experimented with muscle tension, joint movement, and ligament elasticity, measuring and recording the range of motion in cadavers. He analyzed the circulatory system in unprecedented detail, mapping arteries, veins, and the function of the heart valves. He compared blood flow to water currents, understanding that pressure differences drive motion. His study of the eye explored lenses, refraction, and light perception, predating modern optics by centuries. For Leonardo, understanding the human body was inseparable from understanding the universe. Even as he pursued science and invention, Leonardo engaged with philosophy and metaphysics. He reflected on mortality, the passage of time, and the limitations of human perception. His writings pondered the nature of knowledge, asserting that observation and experimentation were the only true pathways to understanding. He saw humans not as rulers of the universe but as participants in a cosmic dance, capable of comprehending some of its patterns if they observed carefully and relentlessly. Leonardo's social environment both constrained and inspired him. Patrons like Ludovico Sforza and Francesco del Giocondo demanded art, architecture, and engineering solutions. Leonardo delivered masterpieces when possible, but often diverted into research or invention, sometimes frustrating those who expected completion. His notebooks are filled with incomplete sketches, bridges never built, flying machines never tested, tanks never deployed, but every unfinished idea was a seed for future innovation. He also explored music and acoustics. Leonardo designed instruments that could produce new tones and experimented with vibration, resonance, and amplification. He studied water organs, string tension, and air columns, theorizing about how sound interacts with space and material. His observations connected physics, art, and human perception, revealing the holistic approach that defined his genius. Leonardo's personal habits were legendary. He often worked at irregular hours, napped briefly, and consumed meals irregularly, guided by bursts of inspiration. He wrote in mirror script, partially to avoid smudging ink, partially to protect intellectual property, and possibly just because he liked the challenge. His curiosity was all-consuming, extending to natural history, botany, geology, and even the behavior of birds and insects. Every living organism was a teacher, every phenomenon a lesson. Even at the end of his life, Leonardo remained active in observation, design, and contemplation. He refined his sketches, corrected earlier mistakes, and imagined new possibilities. His death in 1519 did not mark the end of his influence. His notebook circulated, inspiring artists, scientists, and engineers for centuries. His approach, interdisciplinary, observational, and imaginative, continues to shape modern thought in art, engineering, medicine, and science. In sum, Leonardo da Vinci's life demonstrates the interplay of imagination and observation, genius and persistence. Every sketch, invention, and reflection reveals a mind unconstrained by the technological limits of its time. He teaches us that the pursuit of knowledge is an ongoing experiment, a dialogue between human curiosity and the universe's complexity. His legacy is not merely in what he built or painted, but in the method, the process, and the vision, a continuous exploration of possibility that invites every generation to look, question, and imagine beyond the limits of convention. Leonardo's curiosity wasn't limited to what humans could build or observe, it extended to the natural world in all its chaotic complexity. He studied rocks, soil layers, and fossils, noting the patterns left by ancient rivers and seas. He wondered how mountains formed, why rivers meandered, and why stones contained the shapes of shells long extinct. Long before geology was a formal science, Leonardo understood erosion, sedimentation, and the slow forces shaping the earth, sketching diagrams that resemble modern geological cross-sections. He observed plants with the same intensity as humans and machines. He measured leaf growth, branching patterns, and root systems, noting how sunlight, water, and air influenced development. Leonardo sketched flowers, trees, and agricultural crops with such precision that modern botanists can identify species from his illustrations alone. His notes connect form to function, showing that beauty is inseparable from purpose in the natural world. Even insects fascinated him. He studied beetles, flies, and butterflies, examining their wings, exoskeletons, and flight patterns. Leonardo dissected bees to understand mechanical structures that could inform human engineering. He observed how swarms moved collectively, how insects adapted to challenges, and how natural designs could inspire machines. The Renaissance obsession with nature as a teacher is embodied perfectly in Leonardo. For him, every living thing was a model, every movement a principle, every structure a blueprint. Leonardo's notebooks also reveal a lifelong fascination with human emotion and expression. Beyond anatomy, he sought to capture psychological truth. He studied facial muscles, eye movements, and gestures, attempting to understand how emotion manifests physically. This research directly influenced his art. In portraits, he captured subtle glances and fleeting expressions, giving his subjects life and inner complexity. Every raised eyebrow, quirk of a lip, and tension in a hand tells a story, evidence of his meticulous observation. He was also obsessed with light, shadow, and perspective. Leonardo experimented with mirrors, lenses, and prisms, studying how light refracted, reflected, and diffused. He analyzed cast shadows, reflections on water, and the interplay of sunlight through clouds. These observations informed not just his art but also his engineering, helping him visualize structures, machines, and landscapes in three-dimensional space with astonishing accuracy. Despite his genius, Leonardo lived in constant tension with reality. Projects went unfinished, ideas were sometimes impossibly ambitious, and patrons often found him frustratingly slow. Yet his failures are as instructive as his successes. He demonstrates the value of iteration, observation, and risk-taking. His mind operated at the intersection of creativity and logic, intuition and analysis, imagination and empiricism. Leonardo's influence stretched beyond his own era. Artists, engineers, and scientists centuries later revisited his notebooks, discovering advanced mechanical designs, anatomical insights, and visionary concepts long before the technology existed to realize them. Helicopters, parachutes, armored vehicles, diving suits, modern interpretations owe their conceptual roots to his imagination. Even today, engineers and designers reference Leonardo when pushing the boundaries of innovation, acknowledging that his mind transcended the constraints of time, materials, and societal expectations. Finally, Leonardo's life offers a lesson in curiosity without boundaries. He never limited himself to one field. Art informed science, science informed engineering, and engineering informed art. His notebooks are an interconnected web of ideas, a continuous experiment in observation, creativity, and exploration. For him, learning was endless, and the universe was a puzzle to be explored, not merely endured. He reminds us that genius is not a single accomplishment but a lifetime of questions, sketches, observations, failures, and relentless curiosity. Leonardo da Vinci is proof that a mind untethered from convention can glimpse the impossible, imagine it fully, and leave a roadmap for generations to follow. Every drawing, every note, every unfinished sketch is a dialogue across centuries, inviting us to think, imagine, and push further than anyone has before. Leonardo's fascination with machines didn't stop at flight, diving, or warfare. He turned his attention to hydrodynamics, the movement of water, and its potential for both work and art. He studied rivers, canals, and fountains, meticulously measuring flow rates, currents, and eddies. He envisioned water wheels, locks, irrigation systems, and even canal networks that could transform cities and farmlands. In his sketches, you can see the care with which he examined turbulence, eddies, and vortices, often including annotations about pressure, velocity, and direction. His studies of water weren't theoretical, they were applied, aiming to harness the element for agriculture, navigation, and industry. Leonardo also designed mechanical devices for lifting, moving, and transporting heavy loads. Cranes, winches, pulleys, and gears appear in his notebooks, demonstrating a deep understanding of mechanical advantage, friction, and material strength. His war machines were spectacular, but his engineering mind was equally fascinated by peaceful applications of power, lifting water from rivers for irrigation, moving stones for construction, or grinding grain with efficiency. Many of these designs were centuries ahead of their time, showing an ability to conceptualize complex systems long before industrial engineering existed. His anatomical studies weren't just for art, they were revolutionary science. Leonardo dissected hearts, lungs, muscles, bones, and veins, creating illustrations so detailed that modern anatomists still marvel at them. He traced the flow of blood, the mechanics of the heart valves, and the motion of muscles, accurately depicting structures that wouldn't be formally described for decades. His drawings of the human skeleton, tendons, and musculature remain unparalleled for their clarity, accuracy, and elegance, blending scientific observation with artistic mastery. Leonardo's curiosity extended even further into optics and human vision. He investigated the behavior of light, reflection, refraction, and perspective, studying how the eye perceives shapes, colors, and depth. He dissected eyes, mapped the retina, and theorized about the mechanics of sight, linking physics, biology, and perception in a way that prefigured modern neuroscience. Beyond machines, art, and science, Leonardo explored urban planning and architecture. He imagined cities with organized streets, sanitation systems, and flowing waterways, understanding that health, commerce, and daily life depended on thoughtful design. His sketches included bridges, fortified walls, and buildings that blended function with beauty, always attentive to how humans interacted with space and materials. Even Leonardo's personal habits were experiments. He reportedly napped strategically, walked to stimulate thought, and timed his meals for maximum creative output. Sleep wasn't rest, it was a component of his cognitive machinery. Observation, experimentation, reflection, they were a lifestyle, integrated into every action, every sketch, every notebook page. Leonardo da Vinci represents the intersection of genius and obsession, a mind that could never stop asking questions. His life demonstrates that creativity is not linear, that innovation requires risk, failure, and relentless curiosity. That he was a Renaissance man in the truest sense, artist, scientist, engineer, philosopher, and observer of the universe. Through flight, water, war machines, human anatomy, optics, urban planning, and countless sketches of everyday life, Leonardo pushed the boundaries of what it meant to be human, imagining the future centuries before it arrived. His notebooks, full of unfinished projects and speculative ideas, are a map of an extraordinary mind, teaching us that genius often lies in daring to think the impossible, to imagine the unbuilt, and to record everything for posterity. Leonardo's legacy is more than art or invention. It's a way of thinking, observing, and engaging with the world, a blueprint for curiosity itself. Every sketch, every mechanical diagram, every anatomical study reminds us that the world can be understood, improved, and admired through careful observation, daring experimentation, and unrelenting imagination. Leonardo's curiosity didn't stop at the tangible world. He turned his attention to the abstract and the mysterious, pondering the nature of motion, sound, and even human emotion. He designed musical instruments, some of which were never built, yet his sketches show complex mechanisms to produce multiple tones simultaneously, anticipating modern instruments and mechanical music machines. His Codex Atlanticus contains notes on rhythm, harmony, and resonance, demonstrating that he didn't just want to understand the physical universe, he wanted to orchestrate it. Even everyday objects became subjects of exploration. Leonardo examined doors, locks, screws, and pulleys, dissecting the mechanics of objects that most people took for granted. He sketched improvements, imagining machines that could simplify labor, protect cities, or amuse children. Every observation, no matter how small, became part of a grand experiment in understanding cause, effect, and possibility. Despite his brilliance, Leonardo often left projects unfinished. Canvases remained partially painted, devices unbuilt, manuscripts incomplete. Yet this apparent chaos reflects his method. He preferred exploring ideas to completing them, because for him, understanding was more important than results. Each failure, half-finished painting, or sketch became another thread in the tapestry of human knowledge, providing insights that would inspire generations long after his death. Leonardo's notebooks also reveal his philosophical side. He pondered the passage of time, the impermanence of life, and the interconnectedness of all things. He studied plants not just for their structure, but for how they lived, grew, and interacted with the environment, anticipating modern ecology. Rivers, wind, birds, and human bodies, all were parts of a single, observable system, and he meticulously recorded the patterns, flows, and cycles he saw. One of Leonardo's most remarkable traits was his ability to synthesize knowledge across disciplines. Observations in anatomy informed his understanding of engineering. Studies of flight informed his understanding of water currents. Insights from botany and geology influenced his artistic compositions. He constantly sought patterns, connections between seemingly unrelated phenomena, revealing a mind that didn't compartmentalize but instead sought unity in complexity. Even his personal life reflected experimentation. Leonardo often avoided formalities, questioned authority, and lived unconventionally, choosing freedom for his mind over conformity. He befriended thinkers, artists, and rulers, exchanging ideas, observations, and challenges to prevailing wisdom. He often worked alone, yet he observed the world with the precision of a scientist and the passion of an artist, documenting everything with ink and intuition. In the final decades of his life, Leonardo's legacy expanded beyond invention and art. His methods of observation, note-taking, and experimental thinking influenced countless apprentices and scientists. Even without modern tools, he pushed the boundaries of knowledge, questioning everything from how birds fly to how water flows, from how humans move to how machines can replicate nature. His notebooks were a manual of imagination, a laboratory of the mind, proving that creativity and science are inseparable when curiosity is unlimited. Leonardo da Vinci's life teaches that true genius is relentless curiosity combined with meticulous observation. It is not confined by tools, technology, or social expectation. It thrives in the intersection of art, science, and philosophy. The Renaissance may have celebrated him as a painter, but his mind reached far beyond paint, canvas, and patrons. Leonardo challenged the laws of nature, the limits of human strength, and the boundaries of imagination itself. From flight to diving, war machines to water studies, anatomy to music, and architecture to abstract thought, Leonardo da Vinci remains the ultimate example of a human mind refusing to settle. Every sketch, every note, every experiment, finished or unfinished, is a reminder that innovation is a process, not a product, and that the act of thinking deeply, observing relentlessly, and imagining fearlessly is itself a form of genius. Leonardo's fascination with the human body went beyond painting. His anatomical studies were decades ahead of his time, dissecting cadavers to understand muscles, bones, tendons, and organs with astonishing precision. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he didn't just sketch what he saw, he analyzed function, movement, and proportion. Hands weren't just hands, they were levers and pulleys. Eyes weren't just organs, they were lenses, focusing light and shaping perception. Every muscle, every tendon, every sinew became part of an interconnected system that Leonardo mapped with obsessive detail. He meticulously illustrated the skeleton, the vascular system, and even the brain, often labeling parts in his mirrored script. These studies were not for vanity, they were experiments in understanding how form informs function. Leonardo believed that to create art that felt alive, one must first understand life itself. This principle guided both his anatomy and his art, the Mona Lisa's subtle smile, the intricate musculature of the Vitruvian Man, the fluid motion of a horse in flight, all born from patient observation and fearless curiosity. Beyond biology, Leonardo explored mechanical motion in living beings, sketching how muscles contract and bones pivot to produce movement. His notebooks include studies of running, jumping, swimming, and even the subtle motions of breathing, demonstrating that he understood the body as both an organic machine and a work of art. He studied proportions using precise geometry, often comparing human measurements to architectural ratios. For Leonardo, humans were microcosms of the universe, their structures reflecting the harmony and symmetry of creation itself. Yet for all his precision, Leonardo also embraced the mysterious and the whimsical. He wondered about the nature of consciousness, the origin of emotions, and the relationship between mind and body. Some notes reveal attempts to document dreams, visions, and fleeting thoughts, suggesting that he treated the human psyche with the same scrutiny as muscles and machines. In his mind, every question had a visual answer waiting to be sketched. Leonardo's studies weren't limited to humans. He dissected animals to understand comparative anatomy, often drawing birds, horses, and fish alongside humans to identify similarities and differences. This approach allowed him to abstract principles of motion and mechanics from nature, which he then applied to his machines and designs. Leonardo treated every living thing as a teacher. Birds taught him flight. Horses taught him strength and gait. Fish taught him fluidity. Everything in the natural world became a blueprint for invention. This fascination extended to water and air, which Leonardo regarded as forces shaping the physical world. He mapped river currents, vortices, and eddies with painstaking sketches, noting the way water flows over rocks, splashes, and swirls. He studied turbulence and laminar flow centuries before hydrodynamics became formal science. He sketched canals, mills, and aqueducts with precision, imagining efficient systems for moving water, irrigating crops, and even powering cities. His engineering was not only visionary but also deeply rooted in natural observation. Leonardo's genius also had a philosophical dimension. He was obsessed with the principle that knowledge is not compartmentalized. Art informed science, anatomy informed mechanics, observation informed invention. Every idea, no matter how trivial, was connected. This mindset produced a mind that never rested, constantly cross-referencing, experimenting, and imagining. When most people saw a bird, he saw lift, aerodynamics, feathers in motion, and a template for human flight. When others saw a river, he saw force, pressure, and energy waiting to be harnessed. He did not simply observe, he translated nature into possibilities. Leonardo da Vinci's legacy is not confined to objects he built or canvases he painted, it lives in the conceptual bridges he built between disciplines. He imagined flight before engines, studied anatomy before modern medicine, and conceptualized war machines, hydraulics, and engineering systems centuries before materials and technology could realize them. His work is a testament to human curiosity, interdisciplinary thinking, and relentless observation. Even in death, Leonardo's influence persisted. His notebooks became seeds of ideas for future inventors, engineers, and scientists. Centuries later, when human flight became reality, when tanks rolled across battlefields, and when underwater exploration began, Leonardo's sketches served as early blueprints and guiding principles. The line between genius and madness, in Leonardo's life, was thin, and beautifully blurred. He reminds us that human imagination is limitless when curiosity and observation meet courage. He sketched canals, mills, and aqueducts with precision, imagining efficient systems for moving water, irrigating crops, and even powering cities. His engineering was not only visionary but also deeply rooted in natural observation. Leonardo's genius also had a philosophical dimension. He was obsessed with the principle that knowledge is not compartmentalized. Art informed science, anatomy informed mechanics, observation informed invention. Every idea, no matter how trivial, was connected. This mindset produced a mind that never rested, constantly cross-referencing, experimenting, and imagining. When most people saw a bird, he saw lift, aerodynamics, feathers in motion, and a template for human flight. When others saw a river, he saw force, pressure, and energy waiting to be harnessed. He did not simply observe, he translated nature into possibilities. Leonardo da Vinci's legacy is not confined to objects he built or canvases he painted, it lives in the conceptual bridges he built between disciplines. He imagined flight before engines, studied anatomy before modern medicine, and conceptualized war machines, hydraulics, and engineering systems centuries before materials and technology could realize them. His work is a testament to human curiosity, interdisciplinary thinking, and relentless observation. Even in death, Leonardo's influence persisted. His notebooks became seeds of ideas for future inventors, engineers, and scientists. Centuries later, when human flight became reality, when tanks rolled across battlefields, and when underwater exploration began, Leonardo's sketches served as early blueprints and guiding principles. The line between genius and madness, in Leonardo's life, was thin, and beautifully blurred. He reminds us that human imagination is limitless when curiosity and observation meet courage. He imagined scenarios, calculated forces, and sketched mechanisms in detail, even if materials or manpower made construction unfeasible at the time. Beyond mechanics, Leonardo was deeply concerned with the natural world as a system. He studied geology, noting sediment layers, fossils, and the movement of rivers, speculating about Earth's history and the passage of time. He sketched mountains, valleys, and waterfalls with painstaking accuracy, seeking to understand erosion, hydraulics, and the principles of fluid motion. To Leonardo, observing nature was an experiment, recording patterns, and predicting outcomes centuries before formal scientific methods existed. Leonardo's vision of flight extended beyond ornithopters and aerial screws. He studied air currents, wind resistance, and even the mechanics of falling bodies, experimenting with parachutes and gliders, considering human strength and anatomical limitations. He designed gliding machines with adjustable wings and control surfaces, anticipating concepts of pitch, roll, and yaw. Some sketches suggest proto-helicopter concepts, hang gliders, and airfoils, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of forces acting on objects in motion. In anatomy, Leonardo's dissections were meticulous. He explored the circulatory system, the structure of the heart, and the flow of blood, producing diagrams that predated modern cardiology. He studied the brain, nerves, and sensory organs, pondering how thought, emotion, and perception intertwined. His detailed renderings of hands, muscles, and joints revealed how movement arises from the interaction of muscles and bones, and he even explored how ligaments and tendons act as natural springs. Leonardo approached the body as a mechanical, artistic, and philosophical system simultaneously. Leonardo's studies of water and air were equally advanced. He observed eddies, turbulence, and vortices, sketching water flowing around obstacles with incredible precision. He designed canals, locks, and devices to manipulate water for irrigation, milling, and city planning. These studies merged art, engineering, and environmental awareness, reflecting a mind that saw no boundaries between disciplines. Nature, mechanics, art, and human physiology were all interconnected in Leonardo's systems thinking approach. Even in personal habits, Leonardo demonstrated extraordinary curiosity. He reportedly worked in bursts, sometimes for days without sleep, sketching and experimenting relentlessly. He was known to observe animals, plants, and humans in their natural environments, recording behaviors and patterns unnoticed by others. Every day was a laboratory, every object a teacher. He embodied continuous observation as a method of discovery, blending empirical research with creative speculation. Leonardo's legacy is not measured by what he built, but by the ideas he dared to imagine. Many of his machines never left the page, yet they anticipated technologies centuries ahead of their time. Flight, diving suits, armored vehicles, and hydraulics, all bear the mark of a mind that refused to accept limitations. His sketches are as much philosophical treatises as engineering designs, reflecting the Renaissance ideal of combining art, science, and imagination. Through Leonardo, we see that genius requires obsession, patience, and relentless curiosity. He reminds us that failure is not defeat, it is documentation, experimentation, and the scaffolding for future breakthroughs. Every abandoned design, every unreadable note, every half-finished painting is a testament to thinking beyond the possible, laying intellectual groundwork that continues to inspire today. In this way, Leonardo da Vinci becomes not only a figure of historical admiration but a symbol of human potential, the relentless pursuit of understanding, the courage to question norms, and the willingness to embrace both beauty and absurdity in equal measure. He teaches us that observation, creativity, and daring imagination are timeless tools, capable of transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary. Leonardo's obsession with observation extended to the mechanics of humans and animals in motion. He was fascinated by walking, running, and jumping, dissecting cadavers to understand muscle groups, tendon function, and skeletal leverage. He sketched humans in motion in hundreds of poses, attempting to capture not just anatomy but the principles behind movement. He wasn't satisfied with static representations, he wanted to see life itself as a mechanical symphony of bones, muscles, and forces. Animals were just as important to Leonardo's studies. Birds, horses, and insects were all teachers in his laboratory of curiosity. He observed how birds flap and glide, studying feather structure, wing curvature, and joint articulation. Horses provided insight into weight distribution, balance, and anatomy under strain, which informed his studies of human motion as well as his designs for war machines and mechanical devices. Even insects fascinated him. Their wings, segmented bodies, and efficient mechanics inspired sketches of micromachinery. Leonardo's notebooks reveal an almost obsessive cataloging of the natural world. Plants, trees, rivers, clouds, and rocks are all meticulously drawn, sometimes to the point of obsession. He observed the patterns of leaves, branching of trees, and flow of sap, searching for natural laws and forms that could be applied to art and engineering. His work in botany was far ahead of its time, blending scientific observation with artistic beauty. Each plant was a model for understanding structure, proportion, and function. But Leonardo's genius was not just scientific, it was also philosophical. He questioned the nature of life, death, perception, and reality itself. He was interested in how humans perceive the world, how light enters the eye, how the brain interprets motion, color, and depth. His explorations of water, air, and gravity were not merely for practical invention, they were attempts to understand the laws governing the universe. Every experiment, from studying a flowing river to sketching a flying bird, was a meditation on existence itself. Leonardo also had a profound interest in mechanical automation. He designed self-propelled carts, clockwork devices, and mechanical knights, early forms of robotics. These inventions were sometimes whimsical, sometimes practical, but always daring. He imagined a humanoid automaton capable of standing, sitting, and moving its arms, using gears and pulleys. In many ways, Leonardo anticipated modern robotics and automation, centuries before electricity or motors existed. His understanding of fluid mechanics was revolutionary. He observed vortices, whirlpools, and eddies, noting how water interacts with obstacles. He sketched bridges, canals, and locks, proposing engineering solutions to control water flow. Flood prevention, irrigation, and milling efficiency were all enhanced by his insights. He saw water not as a passive substance but as a dynamic force with predictable patterns, a principle centuries later applied to hydrodynamics. Leonardo's studies of flight were part of a larger obsession with freedom and the conquest of natural limits. He observed birds to understand lift, wrote about gliding and parachutes, and envisioned machines that could soar or hover. He realized that human strength alone was insufficient but treated every failure as a lesson. His flying machines, whether impractical wings or aerial screws, were proof of concept experiments, a vision that inspired future generations of aviators. Even in warfare, Leonardo's mind sought innovation beyond brute force. His designs for tanks, cannons, and fortified bridges were often unbuildable, but they showed strategic